This sunken container became big news after local researchers discovered the weird metallic object on the bottom of the ocean. On the surface, it looked like a standard shipping container, but inside, it held a massive secret. So when their diving robot dug it up and the heavy-duty doors swung open, everyone turned pale instantly. It was no accident that the container was found on this particular day. Coast Guard buoys measured large-scale disturbances in the waters, and sonar reports kept coming in. Only something extremely heavy dropping down into the ocean could cause this, and Captain Izzy Barkley's team was tasked with investigating the tremors. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. The buoy that detected the most tremors was about 20 miles from shore. When Izzy and her team arrived at the scene, they got straight to work. Izzy was also the main researcher, so it was customary for her to dive down first. She ascended and saw their target after just a couple of minutes. So when Izzy resurfaced, she quickly ordered the ship's diving robot to take over. "Let's get it onto our boat," she demanded. Luckily, they didn't just leave their research facility with just any vessel. No, their ship had high-end equipment, which Izzy was qualified to use. So, with Izzy's orders in place, her colleagues prepared the drone to delve down deep. But nobody was ready for the bizarre discovery that was about to be made. As the drone was lowered into the water, Izzy took over the controls, and the exciting part of this mission could commence. Once the vessel was reached, it was time for the machine to start lifting. It attached its extending claws around the container's sides. From that point on, the ship simply had to pull in the robot. But this turned out to be more difficult than expected. The container was unexpectedly heavy. Their ship's crane was capable of lifting massive objects, but somehow this simple shipping container made their machine work extremely hard for it. The entire boat rocked back and forth and even took on some water while lifting the metal box out of the water. "What the hell is in there?" Izzy said. With much effort and a few nervous faces, they eventually managed to lift the mysterious container out of the water. With a loud bang, it landed on the deck of their ship, and the entire crew immediately rushed in to inspect the exciting find. What is it? Why is it here? And what is inside? Izzy's co-workers might have been excited. However, the one who was truly intrigued was Izzy herself because she noticed something that eluded to her colleagues. A shipping container wasn't usually watertight, so when lifted off the ocean floor, one might expect water to leak out of every hole. But somehow, that wasn't the case here. Somehow, this plain-looking shipping container was insulated, like it was designed to keep every drop of water out. But why was that? The team's deck workers, who formed the crew's muscle, had already started pulling on the door handle, but Izzy urged them to be careful. "We don't know what's in there." Everybody awaited Izzy's command. After a few deep breaths, she decided that it was time. "Open her up, but do it slowly," she stated. With a large bolt cutter, the main lock on the container was cut off, and afterward, the door's handles were pulled aside. Slowly but surely, the container doors swung open, and when the door was finally fully opened, everyone watching turned pale instantly. Nobody could have expected them to make this bizarre discovery, and the one who shocked me the most was Izzy herself. She was transfixed by what she saw inside this metallic vessel. I just don't understand. What is going on?" Izzy stepped away from her crane operating post and inched closer to the mysterious container. She silently walked past her crew members and entered the open container space. The woman's eyes were as wide as they had ever been, and with it, she scanned every inch of this confusing place. Izzy's finger ran over every item inside the container. Some objects were made of wood, and others were covered in fabric. They were things that had no business being in a place like this, and with every item Izzy saw, confusion grew increasingly inside her mind. She turned around and looked at her crew. Nobody said anything at first. They had discussed the container's possible contents, but nobody expected this. Izzy was the first to break the silence. "What is this? Did someone live here?" Her voice was drenched in disbelief because the contents were weirdly homely. She pleaded for one of her colleagues to explain, but her colleagues didn't have an answer. Izzy took a step back to look at the container as a whole and shook her head. She was absolutely speechless. The inside of the container was fully furnished. There was a bed, couch, closet, and table with chairs. It had everything any regular household had. "Has any of you ever seen anything like this?" Izzy asked her colleagues, but everyone in the group shared the same disbelief and confusion about the bizarre finding. There were many questions. Where did this come from? Who would live like this, and why? It didn't take long for the group to start investigating. Izzy was surprised not only by the fact that the container was fully furnished, but also by the fact that everything was still somewhat in place. They quickly discovered that everything was nailed to the floor. However, some loose items were scattered on the ground, and they found photos of a man and his family. Did he or they live in the container? Who were they? And what happened? They continued the search to find answers to those questions. They searched every inch of the container but didn't find anything that got them closer to the truth. Izzy let out a frustrated sigh and was about to give up when one of Izzy's colleagues suddenly let out an excited yell. When she turned around, she could see him holding up a plastic Ziploc bag, but what sparked his excitement was what was inside it – some sort of recorder. Izzy rushed toward him and carefully grabbed the bag. Maybe this could give them some answers. Izzy handled the bag cautiously, anxious any wrong movement might cause it to break or ruin any recording inside. The bag was stowed away very neatly, and when she opened it, Izzy immediately noticed that the device was still dry. This was a good indication, and she pressed play with good faith. Even though the recorder seemed dry and Izzy had faith, her heart still jumped when a voice could be heard. The group let out some excited murmurs, and Izzy gestured for silence so they could listen to the recording. It was a male voice, probably from the man in the pictures. This was great. It was hard to understand the recording out in the middle of the ocean, so the group quickly moved inside. At first, it was mostly background noise, but then the voice sounded clear. "I need to record this before they notice we are here and capture us," it responded to someone in the background. The voice sounded panicked, making the first spoken sentence in the recording very ominous. There was a short silence, and then the man cleared his throat and introduced himself as Ahmed Osman. "I hope someone will find the container in this recording and is able to help. Lives are at stake," he hurriedly spoke. The recording suddenly fell silent. Izzy looked at her colleagues, who all shared the same look of pure disbelief and confusion. What had they gotten themselves into? What was going on? The message sounded disturbing, and they wanted to help this person. But how? Then, the recording suddenly continued. The recorder crackled, and the sound wasn't as good as before. Izzy moved closer to hear what the voice said. "We are in desperate need of assistance. We are on the EverCargo Voyager, but I don't know for how long. Please, save us!" The tone of the man got more and more desperate. Then the recorder stopped again. Izzy tried to get it to work again, but her efforts were futile. It was broken. The room fell silent. They were all speechless. Everybody realized something terrible had happened to the people the container belonged to. But what exactly? And could they help them? Then Izzy remembered something. The ship had been sighted multiple times but only seemed to dock for a short while each time. It only refueled and moved minimal cargo, even though it was filled with containers. Izzy frowned and sighed. Why would a ship with shipping containers dock so few times and not load its containers? This odd behavior greatly confused Izzy and raised some red flag. She discussed it with her colleagues, who agreed that something suspicious was happening with that ship. Izzy reviewed the log database again, hoping to find more information about the vessel. She exclaimed when she noticed its last seen location, "It's close!" The weird reports in the log database and the ominous recording were enough for Izzy to try to track down the ship. The location wasn't far, and if they interpreted the man in the recording correctly, time was of the essence. Izzy ensured everyone aboard was on the same page, and she was relieved they shared her concern. She gave the captain the ship's last known coordinates. When they arrived, the vessel was floating 20 kilometers from the coast, stationary and silent. Despite their curiosity, the team felt uneasy and agreed they needed backup. Izzy contacted the Coast Guard and the police. When the authorities arrived, Izzy briefed them on what they'd discovered. The situation was taken seriously, but there was a challenge. If the crew suspected law enforcement was coming, they might refuse to cooperate. To avoid detection, officers disguised themselves in the research crew's clothing and approached the ship under the pretense of conducting a scientific study on fish migration. Izzy and two officers took a small dinghy to the ship. As they got closer, the tension grew. The captain was hesitant to let them aboard. While he gave orders to his crew, the trio waited. After 30 minutes, a ladder was finally lowered. The captain allowed them 1 hour, then walked away. Izzy and the officers moved cautiously through the vessel, pretending to collect data while observing their surroundings. Everything appeared normal, likely because any signs of wrongdoing had been quickly hidden. Out of desperation, Izzy began softly calling out a name – Ahmed Osman. To their surprise, a nearby container opened, and they were pulled inside. The trio was shocked to find it filled with people. The interior resembled the container they had recovered earlier. A man demanded to know who they were, and Izzy recognized him from the recording. Once she explained how they had found the message, the man's demeanor changed. It was Ahmed Osman. He thanked them, saying this might finally be their chance to escape. Ahmed revealed the truth. He and many others had been lured aboard by promises of safe passage. In exchange, they were forced into unpaid labor with no freedom to leave. He had been trapped for 2 years, others even longer, living in squalid conditions inside containers. After an attempted rebellion, Ahmed was punished. His container was thrown overboard, but he had managed to hide a message inside before it was lost. The officers were stunned. What they'd uncovered was more than exploitation, it was imprisonment. The ship held families deceived and detained under horrific conditions. With the truth revealed, the authorities acted. Ahmed provided information about the crew, and backup was called in. A surprise raid was launched, catching the crew off guard. The operation succeeded. The criminals were arrested, and the Coast Guard took control of the ship. Izzy helped Ahmed and others out of their containers. The ship was docked at the nearest city, where emergency shelters were quickly established for the victims. It didn't take long for the media to pick up the story. It became a nationwide story, and Izzy followed it closely as she returned home after the city took control of the support. She was glad to see the situation had a good outcome and incredibly happy she played a part in it.